The reports are from Adrian Wojnarowski, the Lakers' offer has gotten worse each time they've talked. Because early on, there was a sense of urgency. The more confident they were getting LeBron, the worse those offers got. And Kawhi, whatever people think of what Kawhi's doing, Kawhi has kneecapped the Spurs' leverage in this. Like, the Celtics don't want to be in the game because they think it's a one-year rental.
And this is something people never thought Kawhi would do. Say, he didn't have the guts. He didn't have the personality. He's a really quiet guy. He's not going to stand up to him. He's done everything that people didn't think that he would do.
But don't the Sixers and the Celtics have the one thing that the Lakers don't, which is the Spurs don't want to give in to the Lakers. The Spurs don't want to keep Kawhi Leonard in the West, and maybe they do that to spite themselves by just shipping him to the East. No?
When was the last bad deal San Antonio did? Now, they don't do bad deals. Now, if you look at Pop's background, he's one of the greatest coaches ever. Pop's background comes from the front office. Pop knows he's only going to coach 2 more seasons. R.C. Buford is their general manager. It's not as if they'll hold on to Kawhi compared to making a bad deal in the East.
And by the way, if Kawhi is to be believed, you would only be keeping him away from the West for 1 season. So you can't sacrifice, because he's a free agent. He can go wherever he wants. You can't sacrifice your future in order to prove a point to Kawhi Leonard. Now, to the report that Kawhi might sit out the year, I am all for player power. I am all for player empowerment. I am all for players, when they have leverage, exerting leverage. I would not be okay with a healthy Kawhi Leonard simply saying, I am not going to honor my contract. If the Spurs, listen, you run a risk when you demand a trade. You run a risk when you go down this route, and it typically works out for the players. If the Spurs want to be stubborn and wait until the trade deadline, if Kawhi is healthy, I do feel he has an obligation to go play basketball, much like I was not okay with the idea that Kyrie Irving was going to have a preemptive surgery if the Cavs didn't trade him. There has to be a limit to where we say, okay, you've played your hand, and whether you win or lose, you've got to at some point do what you're paid to do.
Well, you can't say that you want out without going to this extreme, though. You do have to realize when you say, I don't want to be in the organization, you say, oh, well, how bad do you not want to be here? Well, I'm willing to sit out. Now, it has zero to do if you agree with it. But when you say I'm trying to get out of an organization, if you're trying to force their hand, then ultimately that's the last bit of leverage that you have as a player.
But this I've never seen. Like, Paul George made it clear he thought he wanted to go to L.A. And so what he said was, guys, I'm not re-signing here. There's no chance I'm re-signing here. You're going to lose me for nothing. You may as well trade me. That is a big difference between I'm not re-signing here, I'm not staying, and I'm not going to play when I'm under contract. Like, that's something, the first we had heard of it, that I had heard an example like this, was Kyrie allegedly threatening the surgery, and most people didn't believe that actually happened because it seemed a bridge too far.
Sam's talking to me while I'm trying to ask a question.
Ahead,
Sam, I'm not listening to you right now. So wouldn't it behoove the San Antonio Spurs to do something now? Because the longer they wait, the longer the Lakers know they've got him, the longer the East is not going to need him anymore, and they can actually get something back from him. For him, as opposed to the chance that he may sit out the entire season, they don't get anything, and it's lose-lose on both sides.
I think that this is not so different than if you've been in a bad negotiation selling a house, and you just both sides come together and say, listen, last and final. Best and final, I should say. Like, let's be honest here. Lakers, what is your best offer? And what is your final offer? And let's find out. Or else, you're not getting him this year. And the one piece of leverage I think the Spurs do have, I don't know if leverage is the right word, is even if Kawhi, you're not allowed to do this, but let's say Kawhi could sign a contract today that makes him a Laker next season. I would still argue the Lakers should trade for him, because what's not going to happen a year from now is year 16 of LeBron James.
Right.
Now that you have, you'll have year 17 of LeBron James, it's one less year of LeBron in this extended part of his prime. That's where I think the Spurs and Lakers potentially are going to be on the same page.
I'm with Kawhi. When you decide you don't want to work somewhere, you have to be able to take the people to the hilt. And that's what it's going to take to get out of San Antonio. I'm with Kawhi getting out.
Even if it takes the whole year?
Yeah, I don't care. Yeah, what do I care about? Like that. When you get to this point from a negotiation standpoint, that's what you have to do. If you felt like, which he feels like, they breached his trust. When they misdiagnosed him, when they sent him out there when he wasn't healthy, this is beyond some just regular decision about some contract. This is about you. I trusted my body with you, and you didn't give me the right information. I'm not going back on that basketball court with San Antonio jersey on my chest.
And it should be noted that even if he was going to be able to get over the misdiagnosis, what Zach Lowe reported this weekend was the final straw was Tony Parker's comments. And whether Kawhi believes those comments were from the top down of the organization or not, what Zach Lowe said was that Tony Parker's comments were the final thing that made him say, I will never play for this organization.
And it wasn't true. His injury was not that much worse than Kawhi.
And Kawhi's. Right.
I think Paul George did what he thought was best for him. Now, I do believe, and we talked about this a little bit, what kind of person Paul George was, because absent of adding some other talent with the Pacers, that lifestyle in Indianapolis, playing with the Pacers, seemed to fit. He played the best basketball of his career. Now we know he had the horrific injury, and it seemed like if he left there, he was only going to end up in Los Angeles. But for me, the glitz and glamour of Los Angeles didn't win out over just being in a town that he feels comfortable. I believe that's what won out. I don't believe it was Russell over LeBron. I don't believe it. I believe that his personality fits in a smaller setting, and he did what he thought was best. Also, I believe that they gave him the type of security that he would want. A guy who had a horrific injury like that, long term, when you look at his contract and what he can do there, the security there in OKC, to me, won out.
The details of the contract are interesting. People were surprised it was a 4-year deal. Now he can opt out after 3. People thought if he was going to stay there, he would take a 2+1, so he could opt out after he gets to 10 years service time, where you can get the most money once you have 10 years in the NBA. I think a lot of people forgot new CBA. After 2 years, you can then tack on an extension like James Harden did.
You can re-up.
So this essentially could be, if he plays well and stays healthy, a 7-year, $290 million deal if in 2 years he adds an extension. But what this tells me about Paul George, and this is not a value judgment, is he did the math on winning and losing in OKC and the math on winning and losing in Los Angeles. And while the math is it's probably more likely he would win in Los Angeles with LeBron, let's just tease this out. If they win in Oklahoma City, he is going to get an enormous amount of credit.
Yeah, there's a number of people that are talking about that and about his personality and who's going to get credit. People think, well, that's not that important. Yeah, it's important if you're an athlete.
Who's going to get credit and who's going to get blame, right? So if you let's just talk about the 4 possible scenarios of 2 teams. Win in OKC, he gets a ton of credit for staying, for giving them the ability, for having the faith they could do it. If they lose in OKC, everyone's going to blame Russ, because for his entire career, whenever that team loses, people blame Russ. If he goes to Los Angeles and they win, who's going to get the credit? LeBron.
Always.
Because LeBron always going to get the credit. And if he goes to Los Angeles and they lose, who's probably going to get a lot of the blame? Somebody other than LeBron. Because that typically LeBron, as long as he's still playing at A+ level, whenever his team loses, you got to find somebody to blame. So I think if you're Paul George, you're like, man, I'm going to get max money either way. I'm going to be under less scrutiny. I'm happy. I like playing with Russ. Now, it doesn't mean he wouldn't have liked playing with LeBron, but I do think that matters. Everyone thinks nobody likes playing with Russ. He just committed the rest of his prime to playing with Russ. So he clearly enjoyed playing with Russ. And
well, we have examples of not wanting to play with Russ. And then we have one example now of someone. So, yes, that does help Russ in his reputation. Now, the style of play, is Russ going to change? Because they can't win no championship with those two. I mean, they can't beat Utah. I mean, so, yeah, it's a good basketball decision. Yeah, he talked about getting credit, getting the blame, but ain't no credit to be got if you don't win. So now, how good is OKC? I mean, there's so many teams in the West that are so much better and readier for a championship than OKC.
But I have to ask you this. Is there something to the fact that if you can play out all those scenarios as you would, the money kind of can match up both sides of him not wanting to play with LeBron James? I know they're friends, but we talked about this on Friday. Does everyone want to play with LeBron James?
I don't think everyone's built for it. And I don't think it's the right move for everybody.
So explain what built for it means.
The scrutiny.
Yeah.
Every night. February on a Thursday night playing a game. Yeah, it's gonna be 20,000 there, and the media, the criticism. These talk shows, yeah, you're gonna get the heat. And a lot of players, they don't want that. And I just believe Paul George and his overall personality, we know he's from California, but there's not a lot of people from L.A. and have the same type of Magic Johnson. That's not their thing.
And everyone that's been the Robin to LeBron's Batman, it's worked out great for. Dwayne Wade, the reason he's thought of in such a highlight the way he is because of those extra championships. He was already an all-time great, but but that was tough on Chris Bosh. For Kyrie, being the Bat Robin was amazing for him. It was tough on Kevin Love. You might say, well, Paul George, be the Robin. Maybe for about 3 days. Like if the Lakers
want to be the Robin for that to work.
But also, he was likely going to turn into the Alfred. Like, if right now this morning we're talking about the Lakers having LeBron and Paul George, are we not talking about them getting Kawhi? Of course we are. Like, he could become the third option there in short order.
Yeah, I think that the Lakers, too, and we haven't mentioned this, what if the Lakers weren't that intense in their recruitment of him the last couple of weeks? And what if the Lakers want Kawhi? Because even though you have to trade for Kawhi, Kawhi is a better player. Kawhi can take over a game. Kawhi is a better defender. And to me, Kawhi is a meaner guy on the basketball court. I'm talking about playoff basketball. Who is better against Golden State? It's Kawhi Leonard.
Oh, well, there's no argument there. Listen, Paul George is one of the 15 best players in the league, but Kawhi, when healthy, is one of the 6 best. Like, Kawhi is a better version of Paul George. But the scrutiny angle, I just want to tell the audience something. You're watching this show, you're probably a big sports fan. Final game of Oklahoma City's season. Do you know what Paul George did? He went 2 for 16. Who did we blame all offseason? Russ. Paul George went 2 for 16 in their biggest game of the year, but he now gets to stay in that role, where if he plays great, it's awesome. If he doesn't, people don't tend to notice.
Thanks for watching. Subscribe here to get the latest from the show. Also, be sure to check out more of the best clips from First Things First, or go watch a few segments from our other shows on FS1.